Hello, ladies and gentlemen, you pleasure seekers out there. This is another episode of the Pleasure Seeking Podcast. My name is Claudia Monticelli, and welcome today. We have a guest, a special guest, and first, let me go about telling you why I'm having her here. I'm so happy to have her. Every time I speak of pleasure and people ask me about my podcast, Pleasure Seeking, they immediately talk about sex. And I say, but it's not only sex, and I give them the whole spiel, about that. And then I thought, well, gee, we touched on everything but sex. And so today, my guest is Sequieta Whitfield, and she's an authentic Tantra practitioner. She'll be talking to us about that. And she's a sexologist. She helps, perhaps we could say it this way, she helps all individuals and couples overcome their sexual and non-sexual issues that might affect their intimate or their social relations and or both with themselves, relationships with themselves and with others. Sequieta Whitfield is a trauma-informed, certified, authentic Tantra practitioner. She's an ASC certified sexologist and Tantra mastery instructor, and she's the owner of what is called Simply Tantra, a Tantra and sex education business based in San Diego, California. And underneath the video, underneath the podcast, I will be posting her information there for you to contact her eventually. I won't tell you anything more about her. Let's invite her in so she can tell us herself. Sequita, come on in.
Hello.
Sequita, I know that you're coming from a different type of career that ended, and then you started this. Why don't you tell us a little bit of that story? How did you get, first of all, in your first career, and then in the second career?
Oh, goodness gracious. I originally was a hairstylist. And from there, I went into law enforcement. I was the deputy sheriff for Sacramento County for a career, which is about 25 years. I know. And, but I've always been a pleasure seeker. I've always looked for that next spiritual thing. And
I like the way you put in the same sentence, pleasure seeker and spiritual. I love that, but we'll get into that probably.
And so I had a very, very good career. And once I retired, I was kind of looking within, like, okay, what's next? I went into, I did substance abuse treatment. I did, working with women and children in substance abuse for a few years and finished that. And then again, I'm still like, okay, something's missing. And I met some people. I had moved to San Diego from Sacramento, and I met some people who were practicing Tantra. And I had no idea what Tantra was. I just kind of thought people had to get naked and have orgies, because we don't know.
Something we hear about in the movies.
Yes. And so that journey brought me to where I am today. Looking for and finding.
I'm not letting you off that easily. We have a lot of topics on the table. So let's get down to the nitty gritty. Let's first tell everyone, because like ourselves who didn't know, what is Tantra and what does it mean? Let's say you're certified. So what is it? What is that meaning of authentic Tantra? What is the difference?
Great question. There are many forms of Tantra, and they are years, centuries old. Basic Tantra that most people practice is Hindu-based. And under that, there are others, like every culture has some form of Tantra. Authentic Tantra is Tibetan Buddha-based. So it's based out of Tibetan Buddhist practices. You do not have to be Buddhist to practice it, but everything that we do in authentic Tantra is from a lineage of from Tibetan Buddhism. So the two differences are mainly that we are lineage based from Shangpa Kagyu lineage. So you can trace our practices back over 2,700 years because it's an oral practice. Hindu-based is, you really cannot trace it back to like one particular person other than the Buddha.
So when you say it's an oral practice, means it's passed down orally. There are no written scriptures or texts of any kind.
Exactly.
So let's say that your training had to do the same. It was oral based. It was oral. It was a teaching that was oral, and you had no written medium. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
No. Okay. So our founder of the Institute of Authentic Tantra Education is Davy Ward Erickson, and she's based out of Kelowna, Canada. She's formed this school in 2012. And so through her efforts, this training does have a syllabus. It does have so you go to her school, her Tantra, Authentic Tantra of Education. It's an approximately 18 month certification program. It's now through her efforts and the school's efforts, they have become accredited.
Interesting.
Through the Canada Board of Education. So they're the only accredited school of Tantra currently in North America, if not
interesting,
worldwide.
Very interesting. Well,
yeah,
you got into that. You got your hands dirty. Let's say you really got into it, and then I have this other hat. The sexologist, and I'm trying to understand, because they're not similar? Are they, one feeds into the other? Is a sexologist someone who works with people who need consultancy, need some kind of guidance with their sex life? Is that what a sexologist is?
Great question. You had two questions in there. They are not one and the same. Like, a lot of sexologists do not practice Tantra at all. So they're basically sex educators, teaching about the anatomy of the body, teaching about pleasure, doing. Some sexologists have other modalities that they work with as well. They may be massage therapists. They may be licensed family marriage therapists as well. So, but our sexology, what I practice, is just the sex education part.
Okay. Have you ever, because I have a vague memory of high school when you had sex education classes in the United States, and I'm wondering if that has ever touched you. Have you gone in that sort of context, or have you remained out of the institutionalized?
Oh my God,
I love
girl!
this.
I wish we could. Because. Yes, because in high school, when we have that health class, and they show you a picture of a vagina and the uterus and the fallopian tubes, and they say, okay, they don't say it's your pleasure center. They just say, this is how you make babies. This is how you have a period. Right. And then they show a picture of penis and the scrotum, and say, this is your penis and this is your scrotum, and they never talk about pleasure, and they never talk about arousal, and they don't teach that, because that would upset a lot of folks.
Well, it still does today. Amazingly, it's still and I'm asking forbearance from my audience and my subscribers, because this is something that you have to get on the table. You have to get on the table and off the table, so elsewhere.
Yeah.
So now let's go get into, I try to mask the questions as one, but you caught me there, and they were two questions. So I'll just try to be blunt with the questions, but I know you catch me there. All right. So now we've understood what Tantra is, and authentic Tantra, and the differences, and the lineage, and the oral transmission, and the school in North America, a Canadian, who has it certified, and out of a lot of effort, I'm sure that was the case. But then I know that you have a number of different topics that you link with this, and one of them is sacred sexuality. And you did come out with that sacred word in the beginning when you talked of pleasure seeking. You put it in the same sentence. And so I pull that out. Now, let's talk about that. Take all the time in the world, because this is really important.
It's taking the sex and expanding and adding the sacred part of it, honoring yourself, honoring your partner, not just hurry up, get it done, that, there's sex, there's times for that, which is perfect.
Right. Now that's a loaded phrase, because a lot of people don't understand when we say honoring your partner and not just get it done. I think maybe we could explain that a little bit more, this honoring your partner.
And we're going to cover another topic that I had talked to you about, that's cultivating pleasure. So if you like, I could kind of merge those together.
Well, do whatever you like, because I think it's typical of Tantra, the notion of honoring and the partner, I believe. And so that will always be present when we talk of, except when we talk about self-pleasure. And of course, then you honor your own body, but you have the floor.
Okay. So sacred sexuality is really about that, about honoring ourselves, honoring our partners, honoring the union of coming together. And I'm just going to refer to it as a couple for now, because it's usually easier to do that right now for sacred sexuality, because Tantra means weaving light, which is visualization, mantra, with sound, which is the mantra, and form, which is the body. And when we teach you the sanction, we've been given permission by our Lama to teach Tibetan 5 elemental healing meditations. When you add the medicine of that, so you meditate, we say we meditate before we masturbate. So when you take the time to do some breath work, which is a form of meditation, or you take the time to do some eye gazing, or you take the time to honor, you're bringing in the aspect of the sacredness. Because you're connecting, with the divine within each other. Yes. So then you've established this connection before you actually start the foreplay, and that's the sacred part. There's one more part. Let me just finish my thought. When you're in union, and for educational purposes, I'm going to say male, female. When you're in union and the tip of the lingam, or the penis, is brushing against the cervix, or the cervical area of the yoni, which is the vulva, the vagina, at the point of orgasm, that's what we call enlightenment, because you're brushing with God. Very interesting.
I think we came to the sacred. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll give you a little, don't laugh when I say this. There were many, many years. And to this day, I'm always attracted to clergymen or people who have gone to the seminary, who have studied religious practice in every single person. And there must be a reason for that. Well, now there's a lot to talk about here. Now, when there obviously it's a union. You talk about the union or alignment with the divine. That we can call it that as well. It doesn't always. Not talking about tantric sex, but in any other kind of copulation that exists on the earth, doesn't necessarily always come to fruition, or doesn't always bring pleasure. And I'm not talking now about sexual abuse. I'm talking about orgasm. Females may not come to orgasm, or the males may not come to orgasm. Does this constitute for you any type of dysfunction, sexual dysfunction? And now, go ahead.
Yes. And I think the word dysfunction, and, in hindsight, it's not a nice word, So
I understand.
Makes us feel like we're, Yeah, it makes us feel like we're broken. If you have the inability to have an orgasm, if you're in anorgasmic, or you have erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation, we have a tendency to think we're broken. There's something wrong with us. When actually it's just three things that is really blocking your bliss. And that's lack of awareness, like what is actually happening in your body? What is my body? How does my body really perform? Lack of education, like what is, where is my clitoris, and what is my G spot, and where is my prostate, and what does give me pleasure?
Yes, the
And
mirror.
then
Take out that mirror.
Yes. And then the third is lack of sensation.
This is something that I didn't expect you to say, the lack of sensation, but go ahead.
So I'm going to use women as an example. When yoni owners, I've heard this and I've experienced it myself, where yoni owners will say, after a while, I just go numb and I don't feel anything. So we've lost sensation.
Oh.
And we wind up.
Why does, does it derived from anything specific?
Great question. It could be trauma, could be trauma related. If we get triggered, if we've had any kind of trauma, and it doesn't have to be sexual, it can be physical, emotional, spiritual, financial, religious. It can be any car accident, but it's stored generally in the pelvic, in the sex chakra usually. And so when we become if we become aroused usually, and we are triggered by sound, smell, touch, sight, a memory, we shut down, and that turns on the numbness that we shut it down. So the lack of sensation can be, and that will bring us into our next topic.
Okay. When you say the sex chakra is that is the second chakra you're talking about?
It's the chakra right above the root chakra. It's the chakra in the pelvic girdle. So behind the pubic, right behind the pubic bone, that whole area. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the pelvic floor, all of that.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm a practitioner of a certain method, Feldenkrais method, for movement, awareness through movement. And you've just given me fantastic insight into how to conduct certain types of lessons. But there, and tell me if this has any kind of significance for you in your work. The idea for me as a practitioner, I try to make people aware of places they don't know exist, like our backs. We don't see our backs, so it's very difficult for us to even realize what the spine feels like or looks like. And I guess, does it resonate in some way? Does it resonate in the sense that the more you are aware of the where the pleasure centers exist in our organs, the better we combat certain dysfunctions? Can I say that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The healing begins, and movement is definitely a big component of authentic Tantra, and moving the body, moving the pelvis.
Oh, tell me more. Tell us more. Because when you talk about the pelvis, my job is the pelvis drives. The pelvis drives everything.
Yes, and what happens is that because the pelvic gets kind of frozen, people are not used to like rocking the pelvis back and forth or move, unless you're a professional dancer or have some dance background where you know how to isolate your pelvis. When I teach my clients, especially men, how to release their pelvic and move and rock rather than bang, their pleasure.
I know. And they get backaches very easily.
Yes.
And that's,
So movement is definitely one of the 4 pillars of authentic Tantra. Absolutely.
Well, you said 4 pillars. Did we get them yet? Or
no.
Or will they come?
I will tell you now.
Okay.
Yeah, because I just mentioned it. The 4 pillars are meditation, which I did mention earlier. Meditate before you masturbate. Movement, connection, meaning breath, journaling, connecting to others, eye gazing, being compassionate with your word, nonviolent communication.
Did you say journaling?
Yes.
Journaling, you actual writing down.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And let's get the fourth one, then I'll go back to the third.
The fourth one is pleasure.
Pleasure. Okay. So that's the end of the rainbow. That's the pot of gold. Okay. Yes. So let's go back to the journaling. Give me an example of what journaling looks like in a healing process.
Absolutely. And it ties into cultivating self-pleasure. So pleasure is anything and everything, 4 types, basically. You've got your physical pleasure, spiritual, emotional, and sexual. So those 4 areas are kind of like what we look for in our pleasure day. And I'll give you an example. When you talked about, you opened this segment about, how it's just not always about sex. Looking for pleasure. When we're seeking that pleasure, it could be something so simple as on a scale of 1 to 10. You get up in the morning and you're at a 5. Okay, I feel a 5. What would make me a 10? A nice hot cup of tea or a cup of coffee. So we want to start looking for that 10 spot all day, every day, everywhere. A sunset could make me a 10. A child's laughter. And certainly when I'm in union, when I'm having sex with someone, if I'm uncomfortable, I'm at a 7, and a pillow underneath my knees would give me an 8 or a 9. I'm going to go for that 8 or 9.
When you said, when I'm having sex with someone and I'm uncomfortable and it's a 7, and I thought, oh, that sounds like a 5. Does one pillow do the work?
Well, 7 is a pretty good, that's a pretty good arousal rate, right?
Oh, good. Well, that's why I thought it would be lower.
Yeah. So if I'm at a 7, but if I want an orgasm and to get to that orgasm, that would be a 10, and a pillow would help me get there, then I'm going to ask. And that's the thing. When we are cultivating pleasure, it's difficult for us to ask for what we want. We've been conditioned that if we moan louder or move a certain way, our partner is going to intuitively know how to please us. And 9 times out of 10, we're dissatisfied because we didn't have that need met. So journaling.
Yeah, go ahead. Journaling.
To touch on the journaling is that you journal your 10 spot for the day. Today I had a cup of tea and I read a book. That was a 10 for me.
Okay. I get
so
it.
you incorporate the journaling in with your pleasure scale.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned briefly, we are culturally not used to asking for our pleasure. And I'm thinking to myself, in your practice, you must come across couples where usually it may probably be the female component. I don't know if it would be, like you say, male and female. One of the two in a couple may not be used to asking. What do you do in that case? I mean, there are introverts. There are people who don't like to voice their thoughts. A lot of people have a different love language, and it may not be touch. It could be, I don't know,
acts
money.
Of service.
It could, it could
money,
be something.
Gifts. Yeah,
well, what about, how do you deal with that?
Great question. Thank you. I have the couple sit with each other, and to answer your question, it's usually men who don't ask.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's why I was going to say usually women. I said, I bet it would be men.
Now, women
ahead.
are the ones that I said earlier. Women will like move a certain way or, moan loud or make a noise, but men actually don't even do that. They're so.
We're generalizing here, right?
So
we're generalizing. Yeah.
Yes. That's why I'm saying generalizing. Yeah. Most, let's say most, and most women, not all, some. Let's do some. But so I have them do exercises where they will do something like a hand massage, and the receiver, it's their responsibility to ask for what they want. More pressure, less pressure. Could you rub my middle finger a little more? Could you put the palm of my hand a little more? It is so uncomfortable at first. But that translates to all the life. It permeates out. So if I'm asking for more pressure in my palm and I like the way you rub my hand, then I'm going to say, could you make my coffee a certain way, please, and thank you.
I was getting to the coffee. I was just going to get to the coffee. It's the first thing I thought of. Because I had another guest on my show, and he's a stand-up comic, and we were talking about comedy and humor is such a broad topic, right? And he was telling me that he works with couples. And I said, well, how could you work with couples with comedy? He said, well, comedy touches all areas of life. And he said, let's try something. And he said, it's a one-word game. I say a word and you have to say the next word. Even if it's just an article, and you get the story. And I felt like as if we were inextricably linked. Our minds had to be so close. And when you were talking about the palm, I was thinking of that because it does lead to the coffee. And what shall we do today? Can you run the bath for me? You know how I like my coffee. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Because using nonviolent communication, instead of making a demand, you actually, what am I feeling? What do I need? Ask for what you need, make it a request, give a thank you. Your partner, your friend, your mother, child is going to feel so honored because you said please and thank you.
Let's say now, I'm going to give you a difficult question. Okay, so you're working with couples, and I'm sure you've run the gamut. I mean, there are so many every couple is different. You have a couple in front of you, and you get you get the feeling that no matter how you try, one of the two does not want to be there and doesn't even love the other partner. They just are there because they couldn't say no, and they have no interest in the game or continuing. They want out. Did you ever get that impression?
I have not had the opportunity to work with someone that close to wanting out.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, thus far I've had couples that are like, we're at a loss. We don't know where to go from here. We know something's not working and we don't know what that is. I've yet to have someone come in and say, I don't care. I don't want to do this. I don't want, I just want out. I'll tell you that's not true. That's not true. During a consultation, I'll get, I'm not interested when a couple comes to me for a consultation. But the couples that actually want to do the work, then they follow through. They book with me, they do the program, they do whatever it takes. But it's usually during the consultation.
What is the length? Is there an average length of time that people consult with you?
I've had, thank you. I've had 1 or 2 sessions, and then I have people that'll work with me for 8 sessions at a time. It depends on where they're at. It varies on what their needs are. And that's what we establish during the, consultation.
Have you ever had groups of couples? Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Go, girl.
I love group work. Because the transformations that happen over a couple of days, like a couples retreat or a couples workshop, the transformation is just phenomenal. The couples are like, we've been together for 7 years and I never knew he liked, his coffee that way. Or, we've been together for only 3 months and we're talking, we've learned how to communicate. So the couples in a group, because I think when a group setting, it's a shared experience. And so couples are like, okay, it's not just us. There are other people that
and is the dynamics, is it positive in the sense that everyone does sooner or later, reach out or extend themselves?
Yes.
Are there people who really are able to hide in a group, or do they usually come out?
No, there's always somebody that hides. There's always somebody that doesn't, whatever the reason, they're not able to fully be present. But we get the feedback. I've gotten the feedback later.
Great. That's fundamental.
Yeah.
So let's go on a retreat.
Yeah. So the feedback later is like,
I'm on I want to go on this retreat. Okay. So give me the pitch. I mean, I want you to tell me what I'm going to be doing on the retreats, how long. So I want you to walk us through it. Come on.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So you're going to spend, let's say it's a 3-day retreat. And so the first day we're going to do some meditative practices. We're going to do little movements. So I'm going to walk you essentially through the 4 pillars in the 3 days. And so you're going to do some breath work. You're going to do some connection work with your partner. It's all interactive. Some of the demonstrations, and then we move into the sex education part where, did you know that women can have over 15 orgasms and that men can have over 15 orgasms? And where are those orgasms and how do we get to that place? And then we wrap it up with the actual hands-on practices where it's usually there's no nudity unless I'm doing a demonstration on a person, but they're fully clothed. But we use anatomical models, and we actually practice the arousal process, teach them, what that looks like, what that feels like for the partners. And during those times, we have downtime where you do your homework, you do your home play.
So let's say, are there any moments of this weekend retreat, where for some reason you would decide to have people exchange partners, to be in front of a person they don't know for a certain reason? Does that occur at all? Did I just give you an idea?
You are right. Yes, you did. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. On a side note, I have facilitated retreats where it wasn't my retreat, but I've facilitated retreats where that does occur. Where, you kind of rotate partners. Like, okay, now you're going to switch partners and you're going to do something with this partner. You're going to do this particular eye gaze or this particular meditation with another. And
partner. I like the eye gaze.
My other part of my bit. Yeah. Yeah. And so, because, on a side note, one of my other zone of genius is that I'm actually a retreat coordinator. So they fly me around the world to facilitate retreats. So.
Oh, that's nice. That's really nice. Yeah. That's very pleasant.
Yeah.
So we did dance around the idea of dysfunction, trying not to say that word too often, but we did get through it. Yeah. And we talked, let's go into orgasms and cultivating self-pleasure or not. I mean, because that's something that I would think would be fundamental, but best.
Yeah. Cultivating self-pleasure is another word for masturbation. Okay. So culturally, especially in Western society, masturbation has a lot of shame and guilt attached to it. And so we've been shamed out of touching our genitalia, shamed out of feeling good, feeling that pleasure that our body gives us. It's been documented that babies in the womb play with their penis, touch their vulva. They're just pulling and poking. And so as that child enters the world, they're the whole pleasure center, but it's not sexualized. We sexualize it. A child is in the bathtub, a little 2-year-old, and he or she is playing with himself because it feels like, oh, what's this? It's sensation. It's a sensation that generates pleasure. The parent or the guardian sexualizes it.
Well, I know that because I have 2 children, and one of them especially was a very, very pleasure oriented, and for me, going back, in time and thinking, gee, the freedom with which they just move, is lovely.
If a parent or guardian had just said, "Oh, that must feel really good," and the kid will go, "Yeah," and they'll stop or they'll go on about their business. It's because we take the shame out. So fast forward. Now you have an opportunity. You have a child that's coming into puberty, and those hormones are beginning to, incorporate the body, and now there is a sexual component to that because now we have the ability to ejaculate or to orgasm. And again, we're shamed. Let's talk about young lingam owners, young boys who will masturbate all day if they could, because that's their thing.
Yeah.
But they get walked in on and they're shamed. And so the masturbation becomes heady rather than body. So they just think, I got to do this really fast, get it over with. So that sneeze, that ejaculation, happens, and they've
Cute, the
disconnected from,
sneeze. Yeah.
they've disconnected from the actual pleasure of the whole body pleasure that cultivating self-pleasure, masturbating with the whole body, mind, spirit can bring. So that's when people come to me and say, I'm not feeling it. I don't want to masturbate, because it's too, perfunctory. So when we say take 20 minutes and the goal is not to orgasm, but to feel and to sense the whole body, mind, spirit, it changes people's perspective on pleasuring themselves. And then we can translate that into pleasuring their partner. Does that make sense?
There are many things, many differences. I'll talk about women. In women of younger ages compared to older ages. All right. I'm younger, I'm 18, all right, let's say 18, until the post-menopause women. And they have different needs, all right, and different beliefs that are very much rooted in their original culture and their family life. One thing that I wanted to ask you, well, not one, very many, because when women are in their childbearing ages, and I would say childbearing could be from 18 to whenever, they can still bear children. What I find is that idea of procreating or having a child overcomes the notion of pleasure. They go into a relationship primarily to be able to get pregnant. And that's one thing, I'll isolate that. The other, on the other end of the spectrum, women in menopause, not so much the pre-menopause, but when they are actually in menopause, there's this no man's land as to what their sexual needs are. And I find that very few women discuss their sexual needs at that age, as if, I'm past that, And I'm wondering if you've worked with women of those two different groups, and what did you find?
Ooh, okay.
Take all the time you need.
So my experience has been that I'm going to start with the menopausal women, because that is my direct experience. It's not discussed in Western culture about what Chinese call the second spring. When we hit menopause, we meaning Western, we become old, we become unattractive, we become asexual, we get all this stuff put on us that, that all of a sudden we're supposed to be. And then within our own, let's say family, sphere of influence, the older women that have gone before us don't talk about it. Oh, yeah, you just dry up and it goes away. Because of the things that happen in menopause, the vaginal dryness, the penetrative pain, the motor skills, the memory fog, the sweats and the flashes. How do we navigate all of that and still be sexual? And so to talk about orgasm at the dinner table, to talk about, the need for more lubrication as you get older, and how do we combat pain, and how do we become sexual again after a certain, way of life and enjoy it. That was my experience. And so for those years that I was not sexual, I too was like, I'm not feeling it. But when I found Tantra and found a way to cultivate that pleasure, I was like, oh, I'm still alive. Oh, she still gets wet. It's like, oh, there is pleasure to be had.
Yes.
And so, when I became sexually active, then I discovered, oh, there's some pain there. What is that about? And how do I navigate that? And you know, other things that I learned how to do, using yoni eggs, using pelvic, you know, yoni yoga. There's things that you know I teach, working with the pelvic floor, strengthening that. So that's the menopausal part, and demonstrating to other women you're not alone and you can be sexual and you don't have to be afraid. So with the younger women, I teach them that this is what you have to look forward to. Yes, you can be sexual. Yes, you can have pleasure. Because I have young women in the age, you know, between 20 and 28. I prefer to work with older 20s, like 25, 28, because they're a little more in tune with their body, a little more settled. So when they come to me and they're like, I still don't feel anything, or I do have pain, then I can teach them what I teach older women, because it's kind of the same. Does that answer your question?
Oh God, yes, yes,
okay.
yes,
Okay.
very much. Because I mean, after all of those years, when people who have been either concentrating on their careers, or they have had children and have literally cut 10, 15 years out of their life, and then all of a sudden, oh, I'm still alive. Thank God, here I am, you know? And it's I like the Chinese, the new spring. I like that. Eternal spring, I would say. Mm-hmm. Eternal spring. Wow.
Because with menopause comes freedom of not having to, you know, worry about pregnancy. However, there's also the mourning of not being able to have pregnancy. So there's navigating that.
Yes, you know, the morning. Well.
The morning. We don't talk about that.
We don't talk about that. Yeah, mm-hmm. How interesting. In my personal experience, it was I'm a very late menopausal. I went at 60. All right. So in my family, my mother was like that. But at the age of 50, twice I thought I was pregnant, and I'm thinking, how interesting, how nice wouldn't that be to have a child at 50, you know? And I was so excited about the possibility, and it wasn't. It was just the beginning of the mourning period. But it's interesting that you're after so many years, after you have changed a different season into a different season, that, you know, the idea is still there and the desire is still there, or the pleasure would still be there. And I remember a conversation with my sister. I said, you know, I thought I was pregnant. I'm so sorry that I wasn't, you know. She started screaming at me, come on, are you joking, Claudia? What would you do? People would think that you were their grandchild, you know, the grandmother, you know. So I said, okay, so I dye my hair, you know, so what? But it's we're, you know, we laugh about it, but it's it's interesting, this whole idea that many people do not extricate sex away from the reproductive cycle still today, and I think that that's a shame, because they're missing out on the pleasure aspect of it. So interesting. Let me ask you a question that I don't believe we got to, and because there are two final questions. One is, what made you really go into tantric sex and migrating there? And the last one, well, first let's go to that question. Go ahead.
I found myself when I started studying authentic Tantra. I found a piece of me that I used to have. I reconnected to that infinite self, spiritually and sexually, unapologetically. I found
that was what you were looking for. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I was always, like I said, I was always a pleasure seeker. I loved feeling pleasure. I loved sex. I loved just the intimacy of being with a person, you know, and myself. But because of my shame and guilt, I was so far removed from that. And when I found this authentic Tantra, this lineage-based Tantra, and that I could feel pleasure and be spiritual at the same time, unapologetically, I was freaking home.
The unapologetically, that's the key word.
Yes, yes. Yes. Yeah. And it's funny because my mother is still with me. She's,
Lucky you, lucky
and
you.
thank you. Thank you. And so to see her go from like cringing whenever I mention the word sex or, orgasm, to her going, yeah, that's just her. That's huge.
Yeah, it is. Oh,
That's
lucky you.
huge.
All right. Now, in Italian, there's an expression that says something like this. When you have a dream, you have people who keep the dream in a closet, they tuck it away. And so I ask, what is that dream that you have tucked away? Do you have a dream that you're leaving for last? Is there something that you still would like to move toward? Do you have something that you would like to go toward?
That's a great question. Economic freedom.
The moon. Let's go to the moon.
The moon. The moon. I really am moving towards spreading this message to people as much as I can, as far and wide as I can. I just truly believe in being authentic, being yourself, being who you were born to be, which is, we're all wired for pleasure. If I had a chance to talk to every single person and talk to them about, masturbation or orgasm or spiritual health
Absolutely,
and wealth,
absolutely. My hat off to you.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
really, really.
Yeah.
It was such a pleasure to have you here.
Oh.
Really, thank you for taking the time. I know you're on vacation, and it was a pleasure to talk to you. And I'm sure my audience feels the same. And I will do my part in furthering your message, putting underneath the video or the podcast episode your information. And it's a small help, but we will get there. Thank you. Thank you, Sequita.
I so appreciate it. Thank you.
Until we meet again.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.